and whatnot, then those are things that you, you're not really planning on keeping that. Your word needs to be your handshake ought to be good enough. In today's world of technology, it's not enough. They need they need a document, they need something signed, and that's okay. I sign them all the time. I even ask for them so that they feel comfortable with that. But because they don't realize perhaps that my word is my bond. That's good enough when I say what it is that I'm going to do. Yes means yes. No means no. This is not usually the Indian way. Usually we just, whatever you say, our head starts going back and forth, and that somehow means yes, but you don't really mean that. It's that trait. It's that way in the U.S. too. We nod our heads, say yes, yes. I'm gonna. If you can count on me, I'm gonna do it. And they're not. They almost know they're not. Are you gonna be able to complete this? Maybe. Maybe means no. But yes means yes, no means no. Then you need to do what you say. Um, Not just say something. Do what you say. I've highlighted this one, to take personal responsibility. Kind of got into this a little bit last night. It's on that program, that assessment that you did. We generally do not want to take responsibility for things. When we make a mistake, we would much rather point a finger at somebody else and blame somebody else for something, or be absolutely quiet and never admit to something that we did or were supposed to. It's a bit of a human trait. I think that's just part of humanity, to not want to step up and take responsibility for what we did, unless it was a good thing. Oh yeah, that was me. I did that. That was a good thing. I did that. But if it wasn't so good, if it didn't quite work it out, if it was wrong in the first place, we don't want to take responsibility. I learned that as a kid, growing up, not putting my clothes away, or not flushing the commode, or breaking something and then trying not to be caught as being the one who did it, and I knew it was wrong, but I wasn't going to confess to it. I certainly wasn't going to admit to it. And then when I got accused of it, and maybe my parents knew that it was me anyway, I would no, deny it. I didn't do that. We see that play out in television when a politician or someone gets caught doing something that they shouldn't be doing with someone they shouldn't have been doing it with. No, that's absolutely. I can't wait for my day in court to prove that I'm innocent of all these things. And then finally, when it's proven that they're wrong, well, yeah, I did it. But it's too late. Now they're going to jail, or they've lost their job or something like that. But until then, it's denied, 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 until they can't deny it anymore. Take personal responsibility. It's your place. We were mentioning it yesterday, even from the standpoint that, say, in Harcus Rubber, technically, Darshan is responsible for everything that happens in the plant. It kind of stops there. We say the buck stops there. The responsibility path goes right up to there. But on the way up to there, wherever you are in that line of responsibility, you take responsibility for whatever that is. Your assessment included being self-motivated, something that you can do yourself. There are a lot of people doing all kinds of things. They need a kick in the butt in the morning to be able to get them to do anything, because they just simply won't do it. They won't get out of bed. They won't wake up to an alarm. They won't just simply get started and do something on their own. They have to be dragged kicking and screaming to be able to actually get started. And I'm not talking about the fact that in the morning you might need a cup of coffee before you can actually be thinking and get awake and whatnot. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the fact that you are self-motivated. If you're going to be an entrepreneur of any kind, whoa, you'd better be self-motivated, or you'll never get anything done. You need to be a self-starter, meaning that's not the same as being motivated, but that's just do it. Get started doing something even before you're told to do it. If it's something you know to do, then go do it. I used to tell the people that I was hiring, when I had 350 plus technical people that worked for me, engineers, practitioners, various types of technical people that were process technicians and things like that. That's a lot of folks. And when I would hire them, I basically was telling them there are about 3 things that are you're responsible for. Number one, if there's something that I need to know, then I need you to let me know it. If there's something that that I don't have to know, then try to keep it from me if you can handle it. And the last thing was that if I have to hold your hand in order for you to do your job, then I don't need you, because I ain't got time for that. I'm not talking about someone I'm training. I'm not talking about someone I'm mentoring. I'm not talking about someone that I'm trying to coach up and teach up. I'm talking about someone that has a job and they're capable of doing it. And if they won't do it, I don't need them. Simple as that. That's harsh. That's hard. That sounds like a hard line, but they've got to be responsible for what they can do. And when we were looking to hire them and to have them in that position, it was because it was known either by what they said or what their history had been, they can do that. And when they wouldn't do it, they would be working themselves out of a job. No one needs to hold. I don't need to hold their hand. So from my standpoint, I need to make sure that personally, whatever it is that I'm supposed to be doing for a client, for a customer, for my wife, no one needs to hold my hand to make me do it. I will start myself. I joke about things on my wife's honeydew list, things that I'm supposed to be doing over time, that she does not need to constantly remind me, because I'm going to do it eventually. in 6 months, I'm going to finally get it done. And so for those of you that are not married and haven't got that kind of relationship issues to work with, there's no need to be, my wife doesn't need to continually remind me, because in 6 months I'm going to finally get it done somehow. But it's kind of a joke that goes on with guys in doing things for their wives around the house. If for me, if I can take care of something, I need to do it. I just need to simply do it. We put things off. We procrastinate. It's all kinds of sayings about that. I was going to join the procrastination club, but I'm going to do it next week instead of this week. And there's never been the first meeting of the procrastination club. It's actually still never been scheduled. So take care of it. Do it. I need to teach others. I need to be willing to teach others. I need to try and teach others. So, well, I'm not a teacher. Well, just tell what you know. Show what you know. Do what it is that you do know. I find that when I teach anything to anybody else, I learn more preparing to teach than I think it is possible to ever have actually taught anybody. I'm always amazed. This whole session that we're doing yesterday and today, I don't know who the people are that are the peers and friends of Darshan that aren't in the rubber industry. I don't know hardly anything about any of you that are in this class, in this session. I don't know if there's anything that I have said yesterday or that I will say today that means anything to anybody. I don't have a way of knowing if this is important to you, if it is interesting to you, if it's informative to you, if it sounds like something that would be useful. There's no way for me to know that. And that's okay, because I'm talking about what I do, and I hope and I pray that maybe this is impactful to other people, to even just explain how they should be, to be a better person. That's really all that this matters. I'm willing to teach others, even if no one else learns anything. I'm going to try to teach. I want to help people. That's also part of the same thing. And I'm not trying to help others just so that I can be helped. I know about karma. I know how that things come around that go around. I understand all of that. But that's a motivation. I don't do what I do in order to get something else in return from anybody. Simple as that. Be dependable. If you're supposed to be at work, be there. If you can't be there, then you tell someone I can't be there. You send them a text. You call them on the phone. You do something that when they were counting on you to do something or to be somewhere and you can't do it for all kinds of good reasons, sick, car wreck, problems, death in the family, whatever it was, that someone was depending on you to do something or be somewhere and you cannot, then you need to be dependable to advise accordingly, and not just simply disappear, not just simply show up, not just do something. If you're dependable, it doesn't mean that you're always there. It means that you can always be counted on for whatever it was you were going to do. And if you can't do it, you're dependable to advise accordingly and seek a change. Be trustworthy. Most of us would like to think that we're trustworthy. Most of us would like to think that the people around us are trustworthy, that it's not that we're concerned about them taking our stuff. But as you get to know people and as you share your life and your struggles and your shortcomings and your good times and your bad times, you would like to think that the people that know about you in various ways are trustworthy with that information about you, to not slander you, to not betray you, to not make light of you, to not belittle you, to not try and put you down so that they can get a step up. We need to be trustworthy of not only the things that we have, the things that we work for that belong to the company, but people's confidence in us. We need to be trustworthy in many, many things and be very, very trustworthy. We don't need to necessarily hide our shortcomings, because we need to own up to our mistakes. That's part of being accountable. Because to be accountable is probably to bare your soul and admit that I made a mistake. I was part of something here. Those are hard. I'm telling you, this is not easy stuff. It's not natural. It is not the human nature to do this. You have to deliberately make a conscious decision in yourself that I'm going to risk to do this, the right thing. You never blame others. Boy, that is like a knee-jerk reaction, that when there's something that just happened, we're gonna point fingers at somebody and try to deflect anything that would come back against us, especially if we are accused of something. Did you break this? Did you forget to tell the customer this? Did you let a scrap part go by? Did you turn off the pressure? Did you, whatever it was? It must have been someone else. I mean, our natural instinct is to blame somebody else. Don't do that. Don't do that. You have to deliberately make a conscious decision to not do that. I've been on a sales call with Jay to one of his customers, and the customer wasn't getting what he wanted. Well, the natural instinct for Jay could have been, it's your guys' fault. It's your customer's fault. I mean, we did what we were supposed to do. This is not our fault. From a marketing point of view and trying to meet the customer's needs, they were in a rock and a hard place. And Jay basically took responsibility, and Darson took responsibility for something they didn't do. They weren't actually at fault for anything. But it wasn't just to make the customer happy. It was because there was a relationship that is being built, and you end up doing that as integrity, as in value to the customer, to not simply blame someone else when it's actually your responsibility somehow to make it right in some sort of conditions as might be there. This is a hard lesson to learn. I've got this bold-faced right here. If you accuse other people of something, I believe it is a natural law of nature and of God that you are probably guilty of whatever it is that you're accusing someone else of. I don't even know how to explain how to get that sunk in. But if you follow politics, if you see people that are running against each other, two different parties of the politics or whatnot, one of them will constantly be trying to accuse the other one of, they did this, they said that, they're doing this, this is what they do. And usually, if you find out more about it as it goes along, they're all guilty of the thing they're accusing the other people of, because you can see it played out in real life in politics, because that's just a terrible sort of a place to be. But in real life, in real relationships, This is a true thing. If you really do get a hold of this and understand that you're guilty of whatever it is you're accusing someone else of, then it'll change to what you do. Like, for instance, I accuse Jay of being one of the most handsome people that I know. Maybe that means I'm guilty of it. There's a positive side to this, but it's usually the negative side that comes out when we're trying to deal with this. If you have anything to say to someone that is not true, don't say it. Simple as that. If you have something to say that is true, but it's hurtful, don't say it. If you have something to say that is true, but it's not helpful, not hurtful, don't say it. We all are entitled to an opinion. We usually have an opinion about everything. Even when you didn't have an opinion, the moment someone asks you if you have an opinion, you've got one, and you're entitled to it. No problem. But you're not entitled to force someone else to hear your opinion. You don't have to share it. It is not an entitlement to you that everyone knows what your opinion is. You don't have to share your opinion. It's fine to have one, but you don't have to share it. They don't have to hear it. Sometimes we just like to hear ourselves talk. There are some people that like to hear themselves talk. And so they have their opinions and they want to share everything that they have. And it's almost like they're deliberately coming up with contentious opinions about something, and they want you to hear it. They want it. They want you to know how smart they are. They want you to know how much they know. I have the choice to not listen. I have the choice to not have to be around them. We need to treat others the way that we want them to treat ourselves. That's kind of back to that karma thing. The way you treat other people is likely to be how they treat you back. Sometimes it is the way that we treat other people is the way we assume that they're going to treat us, meaning that that's actually still what we would do. If we were in their shoes and this was happening to them, this is how we'd respond to them. So you assume that's how they're going to respond to you. And what you're really doing is betraying your own self about how you would respond in that situation. So treat people the way that you want to be treated. Be kind. You say, well, yeah, that's okay. I'm kind. Really? Are you? Are you actually really kind? Do other people think you're kind? Be thoughtful. This is back to not being speaking. This is a silent thing. Be courteous, polite. There's a lot of the things that happen in the cultures in which we live where that people are not very courteous. I think particularly of how people drive in India. The other drivers on the road to me are not courteous. It's terrifying to me to drive in India. Never have, don't ever intend to do so. Unless you've been someone like Jay and others and have had the opportunity to drive in other places like the U.S. If Jay spends very much time in the U.S., when he goes back home, is all of a sudden there's this little frantic that happens as he tries to get reused to the way people drive in India, because we don't drive that way over here. It's not done that way. And they're not really being uncourteous in India. So they don't know. That's just the way that they drive. It's normal to them. But to someone who doesn't drive in those kinds of conditions, it's as though they're being uncourteous. When I hear all the horns going off in India, that doesn't mean that they're actually angry at you and trying to get you to move out of the way. They're just sort of being kind and telling you they're coming through, whether there's a space for them to go or not. It's a different culture, but whatever it is you're doing, be courteous, be polite, be forgiving. I don't know if you know what it means to forgive. It means if someone has done you wrong, and you can forgive them, not hold a grudge, not try to get back at them. That's a hard thing to do. We are reactionary people. Man, you know, when someone does something to us, we're gonna get them back. And it may not be proportional to what they did. It's not just an eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. They did me wrong, so I'm going to do them more wrong because of what they did. We need to be forgiving. We need to be able to have people that work for us that didn't do what they were supposed to do, didn't do it in the time they were supposed to do it, didn't do what they said that they would do, and find a way to forgive them in order to be able to mentor them, train them, lead them, and improve them from where they are. They didn't do anything to us. They just didn't do what they were supposed to do. Maybe it was what you asked them to do, what you expected them to do, what they said that they would do. It comes into play there as well. We need to show mercy, which sometimes is forgiveness. We need to show mercy to people, especially those who need it most. How do you know who needs mercy the most out of all the people that you're around? That's going back to things we said yesterday about trying to get to know people well enough to recognize where they are in their space in their life. And if you've ever had a hard time with something and been in a difficult time in your life for whatever reason it was, then you actually know what it meant to either have mercy, want mercy, or not have been given mercy. And however you felt about that, that's exactly the way that you're going to want to try and treat someone else in giving and showing them mercy when they need it most. I practice doing a frequent version of a random act of kindness for someone. And I never tell anybody or let anybody know that it even happened. Sometimes it's giving a gift. Sometimes it's just back to being polite and courteous in a way that helps someone. They have no idea that I was part of it or behind it or the reason for it. And I never let them know. And I never let anybody else know. I'm not going around and saying, "Boy, let me tell you what I did today." They don't know this, but I'm gonna tell you what I did and all but brag about what my kind deed was. And in some ways, for me, you almost lose the benefit that might have been bestowed upon you as a blessing for having done something for someone else. It's okay that other people don't know what you're doing. We live in a world of social media and TikTok where we're going to take a picture and we're going to type out everything that we did for someone else. No. Try doing something that nobody knows about. Don't ever let anybody know about it. Just do something. You might find that as karma takes its place and things come around and go around, somebody just might do something for you as a random act of kindness, and you have no idea who it was, why they did that. You just don't know. Smile. I was amazed to be in Russia a few years ago for a month or so, and it was pointed out to me because of the harsh, oppressive times that Russia lived in during the Cold War and before the Berlin Wall was torn down, that the people that were about 40 years old and older could not smile. Literally, the muscles in their face that would have allowed for a smile to form had never been developed. They lived in such harsh, oppressive circumstances. There was no ability to smile about anything in their life. And they would say they were happy. They were even trying to laugh, but it was without the expression of a smile in their mouth or in their eyes. But the people that were younger than 40 years old had at least grown up at a time after the wall of communism had come down in the Berlin Wall, and they had found there was a reason for some joy, so to speak, in their lives. That was amazing to me to see that and to understand that and witness it. But then as I travel around the world, and I see people, and I'm right here in the United States, and say, man, inflation is bad, taxes are high, we can't find a job, can't keep a job, can't do this, don't have enough money for that, whatever the American dream is, blah, 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 blah. Woe is me. And it's almost like they can't smile because they can't find something that is pleasant to somehow work in it. And so if you don't find a way to smile, you don't have to be happy about stuff, but that doesn't mean you can't smile. Doesn't mean that you can't be pleasant. And if you don't exercise those muscles, you may grow up to a point where that I don't know that I can get close enough to the camera to show this, but there's unhappy face. And I can say, I'm so happy. I wish you were as happy as I am. I've met people like that. It's kind of silly to think about someone, I'm so happy. And they look just the opposite, but they might really be happy. But we want to try to have a little bit of happiness. There's a difference in happiness and joy. Happiness is an emotion. Joy is a force that you can find a way to find joy in even the darkest, most difficult times. And that's where the smile comes from. Be thankful for everything, even when things may not be going your way. That's a hard thing. Why am I supposed to be thankful for things that are seemingly unthankful for? That's another one of those forces that you choose to be this way. This is me. Y'all can do what you want, but I choose to be thankful, not happy about them, but thankful for everything that happens in my life. Everything, even the death of my son. I'm not glad about it, but I'm thankful that at least that I had the chance to know him as much as I did. Lead by example. Don't just tell people what to do. That's being a hypocrite. Lead by example. Identify who you're following. You need to know. You don't need to tell anybody else, but you need to know who you're following. Everybody is following somebody, whether it is an actual physical person, whether it is someone that you're following in the footsteps of, whether it is the life of some great person that you know or have read about, whether it's the life of one of the gods that you have or Gandhi. I mean, we're all following something in some way about somebody somewhere. And we need to identify for ourselves, who are you? Who am I following? I know who I'm following, and I try to follow in that example and be a similar example for anyone that follows after me. Make a personal plan. This is part of the time management kinds of things too. I got started. I found out when I was in high school, is learning about the presidents of the United States. One of our famous presidents is Abraham Lincoln, back in the mid 1800s. Big monument for him in Washington, D.C. And he was well known for getting out a piece of paper every morning and making notes for what he needed to accomplish during the day, things he needed to do. And at the end of the day, he was famous for his whole life of crossing off whatever he got accomplished and making a new note for the next day and following that. And I thought that was cool. I started trying to do that when I was a junior or senior in high school. And it just sort of stuck with me. And I went all the way through college doing it. I still do that now with a written piece of paper. Sometimes I do make notes for the day on my phone. I've got most people's iPhones have that's a note app of one kind or another, and I make notes. I have notes in there now about various things that I need to do for writing, for publishing, for a client, for things around the house, for things outside my honeydew list. I have notes that's a list of things that need to be accomplished that I can use and prioritize and keep up with, because there's not a whole lot going on in here. And so I need help to organize my own thoughts and to remember things. I'm terrible with names. I sort of wonder, I mean, I've never been very good at just keeping up with everything in my mind of the stuff that I need to do. And so the notes kind of help me to be able to do that. That works for me. It probably doesn't work for everybody, but this is what I do. This is how I keep up with it, with that plan. I have personal goals. Your personal goals could be including, what do you want to be in 5 years instead of what you are now? Where do you want to be in 2 years? What is it that you need to do between now and next year? If you're going to get married, you're going to have plans and goals in order to prepare for a wedding and for where you're going to live. And I mean, those are natural things that happen when we're having big things, and we tend to understand it for big things, but we don't make notes and plans for little things. And those are the things where we overlook the need for little notes on little things, because those will clog up and just become a stagnant area for us that consumes our time and derails our plans. When you took your assessment, you basically were making a personal gap analysis, meaning that if you wanted to improve the areas on your personal assessment that was a 1 or a 2 or a 3, and you wanted that to be a 4 or 5 in any period of time at all, then there's a gap in your ability and in your capabilities and in your assessment between the 1s and 2s and the 4s and 5s. That's a gap. And so in order to close that gap, sometimes it is merely saying, now that I know about that, I'm deciding today that this is what I'm going to do. And from that moment on, it's a 4 and a 5. Some things take work. Some things take deliberate coaching, deliberate study, deliberate research, deliberate practice in order for you to improve a 1 and a 2 area into a 4 and a 5, something that you have to do. And so you make a personal gap analysis and say, what do I have to do to myself? How long is it going to take? Where do I have to go to get the resources? What do I have to do to get from where I am on this assessment sheet to where I want to be? That's the gap. How do you fill in the gap? How do you get there from here? It's easy to think about things like if you were saying, well, okay, I want to be more physically fit than I am now. Well, okay, so now you weigh a certain amount and you have the ability for doing only a certain amount of exercise, but you want to weigh a different amount and you want to be stronger in some way. How do you do that? Well, sometimes it's just simply exercise, consistent, persistent exercise, and eventually you will physically change yourself to the point where that you have met your goal. But between now and then, there's a gap. And so you set the goal. You decide how fast you want to do this, how fast you can do it, how much that you're needing to make changes in order to achieve the physical fitness goal that you want to have. And that's what we're talking about, except it's not in those big things, it's little things. It's just one particular feature in your life that may have been overlooked. Do a incremental gap analysis. There's a lot of people that believe they are the center of the universe. The world revolves around them. Their family revolves around them. Their business revolves around them. The people that are in their sphere of influence, they only exist to revolve around them and to be them. They are the reason that everybody else exists almost. I choose to lose any impression of that at all in my life. It just doesn't happen. I do not seek that. I do not seek to be part of the group of people that are revolving around someone else's existence. And I certainly don't try to be the center of attention, the center of action, the center of somebody else's world. If I'm the closest thing I am is that I want to be revolving around the needs and the love of my wife, my children, my grandchildren. That's a little bit different. But as far as the rest of the world and my associates and my clients and my customers and the people that used to work for me, not a chance. I don't do that. In as much as it's possible, be at peace with everyone. And when it's not possible, don't be the aggravator and the aggressor. We aren't going to be able to be at peace with everyone. That ain't going to happen. It's too big of a world, too many people with too many agendas, and we can inadvertently offend someone. You can do it on purpose too, but sometimes we just can't help. We didn't even know we did it. We weren't trying to be. We couldn't help it. Sometimes it is your job as a supervisor, as a leader. You've got to have people doing certain things, and you're going to have to be the one that is directing them to do it. And they're going to get mad at you. They're not going to like you. They might even hate you. They might tell you they hate you. They might even curse you. They might quit and leave. It was still the right thing to do. You didn't do anything wrong. As much as it's possible, be at peace with people. And if you can't be at peace with them because they won't be at peace with you, then don't be the aggressor. We are very easy as human beings to have a knee-jerk reaction. You hit me, I hit you back harder. You cuss at me, I cuss back at you with more words. You yell at me, I'm going to yell at you even more. We have this instant reaction for the flight and fight going back. We almost can't even help it. That's just human nature. So we have to be in control of our emotions as leaders more than the people that we are instructing and leading need to be in control of their emotions. I have a saying about myself. It's not one of the things that is in here. I choose to be more of an influence on the people that I am around than they could possibly be of an influence to me. I'm not going to be dragged off of my core responsibility, my noble traits by anybody, any group of people, any circumstance, anywhere. I will be more, I choose to be more of an influence on everything else that is around me than it can be on me. I stay true to my noble traits, period, as best I possibly can. I don't always do it. I get close. I try. I'm always trying. Except that sometime that someone somewhere would give anything in their lives that was possible to only have your problems. However bad that you think your circumstances are, woe is me. However bad your circumstances are, however much of something you don't have and how hard that it's going to be for you to carry on and do what you, there's a lot of people somewhere that wish to God that they only had your problems. That'd be so much better for them. We tend to be a bit blinded by our, and it's human nature again. We tend to be a bit blinded by our own problems and our own circumstances and almost think that nobody else knows how we feel. It's not, couldn't be this bad for anybody else. And the truth is, no matter how bad that you think it is for yourself, there's a lot of people somewhere that wish they could have your problems and they'd be a lot better off. And that'll kind of change how you think about yourself sometimes. Be thankful for the problems in your life that you have, because those are opportunities to learn how to overcome adversity and diversity. If you never had a problem, you wouldn't know that there was a way to solve them. That's a hard thing to understand and grasp and learn from. Never exalt yourself by putting other people down. You have probably, I hope that you're not one of them, but you have probably seen where people would say, I am so much better than this person, or I'm so much better than you. That's how good I am. And so the height of your ability is because you're standing on top of somebody else and putting them down. That turns my stomach sometimes to when people do that, to exalt themselves by putting other people down. We worry about a lot of things. Another human nature trait that naturally happens. Wondering if we're going to have enough money by the end of the year, or by the end of the month, or by the end of the week, or to do something. Are we going to, what if it's going to rain and we haven't got the roof fixed, and we need to fix our car. We need a better car. whatever it is that you don't have or you think is going to happen, I'm going to run out of time to do something. We worry about it. You're hurting yourself physically. Worry is something that leads to stress, and stress leads to all kinds of physical things in your body that are not good. So don't worry. Don't worry or fret about anything that you can't do anything about. If you can't do anything about it, then don't worry about it. If you can do something about it, then just take care of it. Then you don't have it to worry about. Practice time management. If we get a chance tonight, if we have good time management tonight or this morning, we have a series of other slides to talk about time management and how to be a good manager of time. And the key to that is that you cannot manage time. This is a really bad thing to know. If you want better time management, oh, by the way, you can't manage time. You can manage how you use the time, but you cannot manage time. There's nothing you can do to manage time. That's a false way of thinking about anything. It's managing how you use the time. We'll talk about more of that later. Consider contingencies. This is the planning ahead type of thing. How do you, if we never think about, well, what could go, or what if this doesn't work, what should I do? Where should I be preparing? In the game of chess, there's contingencies. Usually good chess players are thinking ahead 4, 5, 6 moves. If they do that, I'll do this. If they do this, then I'll do that. And they're thinking several moves ahead of what's actually being played on the board. Contingencies. Those are the kinds of games when the people are playing cricket out on the pitch, and there's something about someone that comes up because they normally hit the ball in one direction or another. The players will adjust themselves in the field as a contingency for where it is likely that something is going to happen in the game. Those are contingencies. We do that naturally in a lot of things. When you're driving, in the United States, I don't think this happens in India, but when you're driving in the United States, we're looking ahead and in the mirrors, and we're making contingencies as we see a car that's coming around us, or what we're watching them to see if they're going to move over quickly, so that if they do I have a place that I can move in order to get out of the way and avoid an accident. There's a lot of things that we do that are contingencies. That are naturally to us, but the little simple things in our normal leadership points of view, we sometimes don't even think about contingencies in that as being a manager or a coach or whatnot, but we should. Time management. One of your best time management things is to not waste other people's time, because you're wasting your own time if you're wasting other people's time. Let them do what they're supposed to do. Quit micromanaging them. So we spend a lot of time meddling in other people's activities in that sense. Here. This is a teaching method, and this is not a telling method. This is a teaching method. So one of the ways I like to explain this is that if I'm going to train and mentor Darshan, say, on some subject, such as washing a wall. Now I'm going to say, Darshan, I want you to watch me wash the wall, and I will wash the wall. And then I'm going to ask Darshan to wash the wall with me. And then I'm going to, when that is accomplished, I'm going to say, Darshan, I want to watch you wash the wall. And then it repeats, because now I'm going to say, Darshan, get somebody else and let them watch you wash the wall. And then you train them up to where they wash the wall with you. And then you watch them wash the wall. And it repeats and goes on. Meanwhile, I'm actually finding someone else to watch me wash the wall. And the task doesn't have to be as simple as washing a wall. It can be anything. It can be management techniques. It can be leadership techniques. It can be something very technical. It can be mold design things. It can be a troubleshooting activity. It can be anything that is done that way. Part of the way of teaching is by leading. It is by doing and demonstrating, and then getting them to do it with you, and then you watch them to make sure they've got it before you let them go out on their own and start teaching someone else how to do what they just got taught. If you can, another thing that is completely against your human nature and mine is to do good to people that do evil to you. It's almost impossible to repay an evil act upon you with kindness in return. It's almost impossible, but it's not impossible. I was taught by my grandfather and by my father that I can be smart if I can learn from my own mistakes, but wisdom comes by learning from someone else's mistakes. That way I don't have to go through it myself. I can learn from what happened to other people. I have been astounded, and I simply do not understand whether it's the lack of common sense, the lack of just something that is practical. I don't understand. For almost 10 years, I would spend between 4 and 6 months in India, most of the time in Bangalore or Pune. And almost at least one time during most of those visits, which means at least once a year, somewhere in India, somewhere in Pakistan, there would be a gasoline tanker truck that would stop on the side of the road, break down, have a flat tire. For some reason, it is not moving. And the local people around it would somehow open the back of that truck and the valves and start pouring gasoline out, and they'd put it in every kind of little container and 5-gallon bucket and thing that they had, start draining gasoline out of that tank. And there'd be 50 to 100 people around the back of that truck taking turns getting gasoline. And half of them were smoking. And the reason it was in the news is because it caught fire from the smoking and the gasoline fumes. And suddenly there's 30 or 40 people that are dead, another 100 that are burned. Somewhere along the way, whether it's common sense or lack thereof, as stories like that would happen rather regularly. I mean, I know of half a dozen or so in the last several years somewhere around the country. It's like, it would seem that people would learn from the mistakes of others and not let a flame be around the gasoline fumes, besides the fact that it shouldn't be stealing the gas. Just forget that. And that if there was people that were around it trying to get some gas and there were people that were smoking, you'd be saying, I think I need to get as far away from here as possible. But that isn't really how the stories unfolded. And that's hard for me to understand. I'm sure it has happened in the US, but I just don't know an example of it. I just don't. And yet there was a guy in Florida, a young person in high school, where some high school kids were having a bonfire around a bonfire, and they were all in there. And for whatever reason, he threw a pan of gasoline on the fire. The girl got burnt real bad and died about a month later. In my mind, I can't even imagine why that would happen. I didn't need his example to know that gasoline is flammable and it's going to burn you, and it's going to I don't need to be smart and learn from that myself that's what's going to happen. I'm going to stay on the wise side of that and say, man, I'm not going to do that, and I don't want to be around anybody else that does. But those are extreme examples of what we're doing. I'm 70 years old. I've got, as a reasonable adult, I've got 50 years of being over 20 years old. These noble traits come from my 50 years, 5 decades of experience, trial and error, mistakes. Sometimes get it right, often usually get it wrong. You don't have to spend 50 years learning what I'm sharing with you yesterday and today. You can be kind of wise and cherry pick a few of these things and learn them in one day, in just a few hours, and not have to spend decades learning these things if they're valuable to you. That's kind of how that happens. That's being wise. When you attend a class about technical things where, and this happens to me all the time, where that I'm sharing some technical thing that may have taken me 10, 15 years to learn and develop. Something, for instance, as simple as, for those of you who know what they are, lazy dowel pins. You don't have to spend 20 years figuring out how to do that. You could just incorporate them right off the bat. You can, because now you know. You can be wise to incorporate the benefits of those things rather than having to be smart and develop them yourself over 20 years. That's what we mean by that. Learn from the mistakes, learn from the good things that other people do. To ignore what has happened in the past is to absolutely guarantee and ensure that history will repeat itself. It has been said many times that history does, in fact, repeat itself in some way, in some form. Whether it's over 1,000 years, 100 years, it's the things that allowed Rome to be built in 2,000 years, Rome to fall apart. There's a study of how that happened, what happened to them, and every regime that has come along and risen into power and then gone out of power, there are common patterns to them. This is the reason that even the United States, 250 years since we got started here in the United States, I'm concerned. It's not something I worry about, but I'm concerned that the way that the culture of the United States is changing before my eyes in my lifetime is a potential threat to the very existence and continuation of the United States and the government of the U.S. the way that I know it and have experienced it. It can get out of hand. It can fall apart. I hope it doesn't. I really hope it doesn't. But it's possible. There are governments that come and go all the time, and it's possible if it's not taken care of. History will repeat itself on a personal level, on a global level. Do not make rules and demands for others which you do not apply to yourself. Kind of makes sense if you think about it. That's a good way to treat people. Be aware that the standard that you use to measure or judge others by is the same measure that you will be judged by. This is kind of like if you accuse somebody of something, then you're probably guilty of it yourself. This is a little different. This is a judgment. This is an accusation. This is something where that you have made a decision about someone else's actions or character. And whatever measure, whatever standard, whatever means you use to come to that conclusion and make that pronouncement upon someone else, you're probably going to be measured the same way. So it's best to make sure that you're doing it with integrity when you make judgments, or maybe don't judge at all. If you want to be good and faithful in really big, important things, then be good and faithful in little things. I actually believe that if you aspire to want to be seen and known to be taking care of big assignments and the praise and the glory that comes upon being in charge of a big assignment and being faithful to it, if you cannot and if you do not demonstrate a good and faithful practice in little things that are unknown and not seen, then you're not going to be good at being faithful in the big things. Take care of the little stuff. Keep your socks organized in your drawer. Take care of the little things. Smile, be polite, be courteous about the little things. Big things will take care of themselves. If you really want to be a good leader, make sure you are a good follower. I also believe that you cannot be a good leader if you are not a good follower. I similarly believe that you cannot be a good teacher if you're not a good student. I don't mean you make A's. I mean that you actually listen, you pay attention, you learn from someone else in some way. If you're not a good student, I don't think you can be a good teacher. If you're not a good follower, I don't think you can be a good leader. It's just my opinion. I might be completely wrong, but I might not. If there really is something that you need, this is an interesting thing. If there really is something you need as a business on a personal level, then find somebody who needs the same thing and try to help them achieve it. You're back into that what goes around comes around thing, the whole idea of karma. There's an aspect of that I believe is really real. To give someone else the thing that you need is likely the way that you will eventually find what you need. Not from them. It ain't coming back from them probably, but somewhere else, the thing that you really need comes from there. And this not only has to do with money and finances, this might even just be compassion. This might just be mercy. This might be, man, I wish I had a friend. Well, go be one. Be a friend to someone who doesn't have one. Anything up and down the scale of life, it would be. If you have a religious faith or belief, then be true to it. Don't violate whatever the rules are, whether it's Hindu, Buddha, Christianity, whatever it is. If you've got a religious belief, then be true to that. Make and set good habits for yourself and persevere to deliberately break the bad habits that you recognize, that you find. And that's hard, man. This is hard. It's hard to start good ones and it's hard to break bad ones. It takes deliberate effort, practice, persistence, patience, start again, keep going, never give up, but it's all worthwhile. Be content with all of the things and the circumstances, whatever the day brings. That's not the same as being happy about it. That doesn't mean that you're just going to accept it and go on because that's just life. No, it means that to be content is to be at peace with it. You got a lot of things to do to change it and to try to make it better and overcome it. Those are all part of getting past them, but be content in them. That, this is not all about you. The world doesn't revolve around you. The world is not out to get you. It's a hard thing. These are not easy. They're noble. Seek the knowledge and the ability to change the things around you that need changing. Deliberately seek and practice the patience that it takes to leave things alone that do not need to be changed. And seek the wisdom to know the difference. Live a life in such a way that you can earn respect. You cannot demand respect. People say it. People get upset because they don't respect me, or I want you to respect me. It doesn't happen that way. Respect is something that I cannot demand. I have to earn. It is a free gift. If anybody, like Darshan and Jay, I know they do because they say they do. They respect me. I can't earn that. I mean, I can't demand that. It has to be earned. It has to be given by them and not because I ask for it. When we respect somebody, that is something that we have 100% of the power to give and grant respect, whether we tell them about it or not. Nobody can make you respect anything because it's not respect if they do that. It is a gift, freely given and naturally given when it is deserved. Well, attempt to live your life in such a way that you can earn respect. And part of that is, if you respect somebody, why? Why do you respect them? What is it that they have done that you respect? Adapt that to your life and try to live that way. Don't ask somebody to do something that you would not be willing to do yourself, kind of like the wash with me. I'm not just going to tell you to wash the wall. I want you to watch me wash the wall. I want you to wash the wall with me. That's very different than just saying, okay, wash the wall. Now go get someone else to wash the wall. We're not really delegating that way. The word disrespect is the opposite of respect. Well, don't disrespect anyone on purpose. It is your free gift to respect somebody. And just because you don't respect them doesn't mean that you have to disrespect them. That's to cast them down. So there's a difference in to respect someone versus not respecting someone because of what they do or say or how they act. And that's different than disrespecting someone. Don't put them down. You don't have to do that. That's also up to 100% up to you. All of that is up to 100% you. No one can demand that you do anything about that, either one of them. I choose to respect the people that I respect. I may not have opportunity to tell them. I may never meet them. I choose people that, because of what I know about them, see about them, hear about them personally or otherwise, I don't respect them. Fine. That's my choice. That's on me, and that's okay. But I choose to not disrespect somebody. I choose not to do that. I may have the right to do it. May be the natural thing to do. They may deserve my disrespect. I choose not to. That's me. I choose not to. It's never too late to say that you are sorry. This is part of taking personal responsibility for things. It is hard for people to say they're sorry about something. It means you're having to admit that there was a mistake that you made. Simple as that. Some people, like the ones that I was talking about, that didn't have the muscles in their mouth and face to be able to smile. There are some people that are not able to say they were wrong. It comes out as I have to admit that I'm sorry. They can't say the word sorry or wrong. It just the words just never form in their mouth because they can't come to grips with that at all, to admit that they're wrong, much less to say that they're sorry for something. You need to be able to do that. It's never too late to do that. I'm talking about years and decades could go by, and you finally come to grips with the fact that you need to apologize. You need to say you're sorry about something. We sometimes muse the question about what is the hardest thing in the world to do? What would be the hardest thing in the world to do? This is my opinion. This is my answer. I believe that the hardest thing in the world to do is to take the blame and the responsibility for something that someone else did. It wasn't your fault. You didn't do it, but you take the blame and responsibility for it. Sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes that's how you show mercy. Just simply not going to talk about that anymore. It's a hard, valuable thing to learn how and why to do that. Be ethical in your dealings with one another. And that word ethical is the thing to do. An ethical thing to do is the right thing to do, even when nobody is looking or aware of what you're doing. You might have the right to do something else, but the ethical thing is to do the right thing, even when no one else knows about it. We find this in business more than anything else. There's business ethics. Okay, people will work they're on the clock. They're going to put in an 8-hour day, and they will find a way to take their 15-minute break and stretch it into 30 minutes. They'll find a way to take, it's kind of like stealing, but it's just a pen, it's just some paper, it's just some stuff. It may actually almost be okay or not really bad, but it's not ethically the right thing to do. And so we need to do the right thing, even if no one's looking. In my work in the Philippines and other parts of Asia, if I put something down, this is especially true in the Philippines. If I were to put my hat down or put my phone down or something like that, and walk away from it for a moment to look at something else in the store or whatnot, their culture is that if I put it down and left it alone, that means I didn't want it anymore. So they're free to take it as their own. Well, no, that's not right. Even if that's their culture, it's ethically the wrong thing to do. That's not the right thing to do. And so most of the time with our business dealings and our leadership dealings, we're not really getting into that so much as doing the right thing, even if they don't know what is being done. Do the right thing anyway. Clean up after yourself. A couple years ago, Prime Minister Modi had this thing about cleaning up India, and it lasted for a couple of years. Everybody was out on the street sweeping a little area here, and everybody was doing something to try to clean up India. Do a little bit here and there, and it was really impressive and inspiring how that so many people were doing that all over the place, just doing their part to try and clean up India a little bit on the streets and whatnot. That was impressive because India's, when you haven't been anywhere else, you don't know how dirty and trashy some of the streets are in the towns and things like that. Jay has been in the United States. Darshan has been in other countries. I've had several friends from India that have been visiting in the United States for technical things and whatnot, and we'd ride down the road with them, and they would ask the question on the highways and the interstates, who cleans up all the trash on the interstate? Nobody, because we don't throw it out. We're not trashing the roads as a general rule in our culture. There are places in the United States that are terrible litter. It's an issue in a lot of places, but not everywhere. And so not to the extent that it is in many of the streets in India. And if you haven't been somewhere else, you don't realize kind of how much trash and throwaway stuff, because there's not a system. There's not even a system for where you can put stuff and how it would be dealt with from a garbage and a trash point of view. So they kind of have no choice but to put it wherever it can be. But you don't want that in your office. You don't want that in your home. You don't want that in the places that you're shopping for groceries. So that at least there are some places that are cleaner than others, obviously for good reasons. But clean up after yourself. And what that usually means is that you drink a cup of coffee and you're not throwing it in the floor right there beside where your desk is. You're putting it in a trash can. You find a way that there's a way to clean up. If you make a mess, clean it up. Do your part. It's not something that you have to dictate to somebody else to get done. Just be responsible for yourself to clean up after yourself. Do your job, whatever your job is. I choose to make sure that I'm a consultant. I'm a trainer. I don't have anybody that reports to me, and I don't report to anybody. I still have a job. I still need to do my job. I need to be my own self-starter. I need to be my own person doing my job, because there's nobody else to do my job. I have to do it or it ain't gonna get done. Give others respect that you would like to have shown toward you. I can't demand someone else's respect, but I can give them respect when they deserve it, and show them that respect. I need to manage. I need to coach. I need to teach. I need to mentor. I do not need to dictate or be a bully. I have been in lots and lots of plants with owners and managers and supervisors that were very harsh, if not cruel, if not leading by terror and fear of their employees. And I feel sorry for the people that work in those conditions. The very opposite of a manager, coach, leader, mentor, trainer is to be a dictator and a bully about it. I do not do that, and I choose to not be around and consult with people that do that. I don't help them. I have the choice to not help, to not be a part of that. Give others the benefit of a doubt until they prove otherwise, meaning that whatever they say they did, whoever they say they are, whatever they say they believe, whatever they say they can do, okay, I trust you, first blush, until they prove otherwise. And then take some kind of action to try and help them to improve once they weren't able to follow up in what they said. That's what the benefit of the doubt is. Instead of doubting them right up front, if you don't know any better, give them the benefit of the doubt. Say, okay, give you a chance. That's what we're doing. Don't act or speak as a hypocrite, meaning like the smoking. You don't need to smoke. I know I'm smoking in front of you, but you don't need to smoke. That's kind of being hypocritical. Don't be that way. Do not promote yourself to impress others. I'm having a difficult time with this aspect in this session because I'm talking about myself in all of these noble traits. I have no choice but to present it that way because it's about me. I'm bearing my heart and soul. But I'm not doing it to impress you. That is not why I'm doing this. I didn't ask to present this information. Darshan asked me one time when he was looking to hire someone if I had anything about how to assess someone else's abilities. And this was part of what I gave him. And he wants to share it. Okay, fine. And I'd already known him 10 years before we even did that. This wasn't on my list of things to be sharing and promoting and talking about. In fact, I don't even like to talk about myself. I want to talk about other people. But yet I'm having to present and promote myself in this presentation, but it is not to impress you. If you're impressed, that's all on you. That is not why I'm doing it. I'm embarrassed to be able to talk about myself. I choose to let someone else sing my praise and talk about my accomplishments. And if no one does, you are never going to hear about them for the most part. Because I don't toot my own horn. I'm not standing on the pulpit to talk about how great I am, like what I've done and where I've been and why, how impressive that I am and how much I know. I'm not doing that. I would rather let somebody else talk about whatever they think my accomplishments are. Let someone else talk about why I might be good at this or that or the other. I am well known because of my books and my training, and after 40 years of traveling around the world, I am well known, but not because I've made myself well known. I don't really even have a website. I don't have marketing tools. I don't even have a business card. I don't promote myself, probably to my financial detriment, but I don't. I don't do that. I'm quiet about that. Here at the very end, if I start something, I'm going to finish it, if at all possible, unless I die. I won't be able to finish that. I'll finish life. Be aware of your bandwidth. This is a word that has only come into existence in the last several years. It originally had to do with satellite information going up to the satellite and coming back down. And so we talk about that with our cables and our satellite TVs and our gaming and our apps on our phones and things like that, as to the fact that there's only so much bandwidth. And the more people that get on the satellite, or the more people that are using the cable or the fiber optics and whatnot, the bandwidth can only handle so many different communications and bits of information at one time, and then it slows down if you exceed the bandwidth. So that's where the technical word comes from. However, it's said in Indian, I don't know, but in English, that's what we're talking about. There's only so much that can go through it. And so it's kind of like having a water pipe, and the water pipe is only 12 to 15 millimeters in diameter. And so there's only so much water that can go through that water pipe at one time. The higher velocity that you pump it, then the more water can go through it faster, but there's only so much water that can go through a water pipe that big. And if you start using more water than can get through it, then the stream slows down and nobody has the full amount of water that could have been had if they were the only one using it. So now I'm talking about something like that with my personal bandwidth. How much time do I have? I can't just simply say yes to everything because I may not have time to do it. This is getting into time management. I'm not making idle promises. I have to be able to say, yes, I can do it because I believe I can. I have time to do that. I have space in my calendar to do that. I have the ability to do that with whatever resources I have, or I don't. And I have to sometimes turn down business. I sometimes have to turn down opportunities to teach or to travel because I don't have a way to fit that in my schedule, in my time. And I have to deliberately make time for family. I have to deliberately make time for me. I have to deliberately make time for sleep. And sometimes I have to abandon my sleep in order to talk to someone that's on the other side of the world. Like right now, this is my sleep time, not my awake time, but it's your awake time. So I yield, I flip my schedule in order to be able to do this, and that's okay. But I still only have a certain amount of capability, a certain amount of time to be able to prepare and conduct whatever it is that's going along. Be aware of your bandwidth. Sometimes you have to say no. Sometimes you have to choose between what it is that is urgent and what is a priority in order to be able to accomplish what's required. And then as leaders and as supervisors and as bosses, that's where we start finding ways to delegate so that we don't have to say no. We delegate some of the activities so that we can offload certain things that are draining our bandwidth. In my case, I'm a teacher. I'm the teacher of these kinds of things. I don't have anybody else that can actually step in and teach the technical things that I have to teach. So I've got to sort through my other obligations and find out what is it that is in my schedule that I can either push off to another time, get somebody else to do it. I need to work on, I need to get some firewood cut and stacked up for the winter. Well, I can do that, but maybe it's better for me to have somebody else do that, delegate it to someone else, even if I have to pay them, because it is more important for me to do the things that only I can do. I can't delegate having these sessions like this, but I could delegate someone that could fix my roof or do some plumbing for me or something electrical or some kind of chore or something that could be fixed. I can delegate that to somebody in some other way. But the things I have to do, the things I have to do. Dare to dream. Big dreams. Always have some other plan that, that, boy, I wish I could do this or I'd love to do that. Make dreams out there that are things that you would really like to see come. They may never come to pass, but it is okay to dream. It's okay to, man, I'd like to go on vacation. I'd like to visit here. You may never get a chance to do it, but that should not stop you from dreaming for it and wishing for it, so to speak. Dare to laugh in spite of anything. Dare to dance in the presence of darkness, danger, and difficulty. and never, ever lose hope for the things that are good. Never. That is the conclusion of those noble traits, as I call them. And they are valuable to live by. The next thing that I want to go in and talk about is what I refer to as an organizational culture. This is just going on. So this is now talking about the culture of your company. This isn't you personally. This is the group of people that you are in. If you own a business, if you are managing a business, if you're managing a cell of construction, if you're working with a group of friends that y'all are in a club together or a business association or whatever that it might be, there's a culture that is in there, and you organized rather than being toxic. Toxic is the whole idea of something that is poisonous. It is not good. And so we're talking about those kinds of things. And so successful leaders, they know that this is what this is always about. It's always about the person, the customer, the team member, the leader, the owner. It's one person at a time. This is what we're people oriented. And you could ask them to fill in the blank before you told them this. I could ask this of all of the business people that are in this group. What are we not in the business of, or what are we in the business of? And most people say, well, we're in the business of rubber and tires and this and that, of making stuff. No, actually what you're in the people business. Now, those other things are the things that you sell, but in order to sell those things, you're in the people business. And so this is about people. This is about an organization of people in some way. And so a remarkable organizational culture is more than just a culture that's good or great. It's even compelling. People want to actually work there. A remarkable organizational cultures, they not only fulfill the objectives of the organization, but they also transform everybody that's in the organization, including the employees, the customers, the communities, and beyond. That's what a culture of a business does. It becomes aware. People become aware of that company. They want to do business with you. They want to keep doing business with you. The community is aware that they would like that. They know people that are working there, and the company is contributing to the community, and it becomes a culture that is remarkable. It happens all the time, but there are so many examples of businesses in every discipline that have terrible, toxic cultures. Nobody wants to work there. No one wants to stay there. The community doesn't want the company there. There's just all kinds of things. A strong, healthy organizational culture doesn't just happen. They don't happen by themselves. They're not an accidental. They're not unintentional. Some group of people, someone must create that culture and or transform an existing one into that kind of culture. Creating a remarkable organizational culture requires intentionality, being deliberate, and with a vision. Somebody has to have, it may only be one person, but somebody has to have a vision or the company will fail. And the people in the company must recognize that someone has that vision. They may be the top person. They may be the owner. They may be someone at a lower level of supervision that actually has the vision that the top management and others adopt and move forward with and make that a reality. That vision can come from somewhere, and it can come from multiple people, but somebody's got to have a vision for that company. The driving force behind a strong culture is an individual or a group of individuals who share a common vision for the future. There may only be one person that has it, but there's a group, if not the whole company, that now adopts and shares that vision for the future with where the company's going. Leaders of these types of organizations, they'll imagine that the future and the design, and they'll design a pathway in order to align and schedule the organization to actually meet the goals of that future vision. The leaders will know how to motivate the members of the organization to follow that path. and find a way, but by communicating it to them, by teaching them, by leading them, by mentoring them, by coaching them to be able to follow the path that the vision is required. A healthy organizational culture is established from the top down. An organization does not start from the bottom up. It is established from the top down, from the top rung down to the bottom rung. But that healthy and robust organizational culture is maintained from the bottom up. They have to buy into it. It may be established with a vision from the top down, but it's maintained and becomes robust when the people on the lower rungs buy into that vision and make it happen. That's how it stays. That you cannot dictate and force by fear or demands a good organizational culture. You can establish one, but until they buy into it, you don't have one. Culture is the soul of the organization. It's the way that we envision, engage, experience others within the organization. The culture is defining the values and the behaviors that are acceptable and expected. This is the reason that the noble traits and things are important for someone and everyone to kind of have, because it's speaking and developing the culture that is going to be resident in the company. Buildings and products do not have culture. Things do not have culture. A market does not have culture. The culture comes from the organization, from the people that are in the organization. And organizational culture can be a very elusive concept to describe. One way to describe it is not just working together, but it's the fact that y'all live together. We generally spend more time in work with people than almost anything else we do in our lives. And so we're technically living together, not in the same house, but we're interacting with a group of people for many hours every week, every year, for decades, wherever it is that you're working. And so those relationships should foster and should be grown. And that's where that organization, it's a living organizational being. It happens when the people that are in the organization get aligned around whatever that purpose, mission, and vision is, and the values form bonds in the relationships that go way beyond just the work environment. This type of culture celebrates together. They grieve together. They grow together. They celebrate together. They enjoy the progress of trying to get there together. Together is the key word there. It's a difficult task in many ways, nearly impossible, to describe a remarkable organizational culture, because each organization and each culture of each plant in each country, in each place, in each industry is a cumulative makeup of the people that are there. That means it's completely unique to just that company. And that's the reason it's very difficult to explain, but the principles are still real. It's far easier to create a strong, healthy organizational culture from the beginning as a startup of a company than it is to rebrand one, to change one. But that's not impossible. It just is a little bit longer, a little bit harder to create a new culture on top of the one that's already there. Sometimes we join up later, becoming a part of a culture that already has been existed for a season. Well, that happens all the time. People join the company and there's already a culture that's there. And so they either have to conform to that culture, or the culture conforms to them, or together they form something else that's different. Changes in ownership, changes in leadership. Company gets merged to another company. Companies get joined together with joint ventures. A company goes out of business. You lose a major client. You get a new client, a new business thing. Things can happen to a company that actually impact the culture of the company, either for good or for bad. And so we've got to be conscious of that as we try to move forward. The culture organizing improvements can happen much later in the organizational life, after the company got bigger, stronger, more profitable. But then it even takes more focus, more intentional effort and commitment to create a robust culture. The antithesis, the opposite of a remarkable organizational culture is a toxic culture. Now, toxic cultures are known for poor service, poor performance. Fear is much more of a part of a culture that is virtually impossible for employees to do their best work. I've seen them. I've been in those companies trying to help them, and it's sad. I feel very sorry for the employees that work under a tyrant. The employee engagement is going to be low in a toxic culture. The employee turnover will be high. People constantly, man, I've had enough of this, and they're out. They can find another place to work that's even less money, but less harsh. They're going if they can, when they can. The more that mistreatment and deceit are present by the organization of leadership, the more toxic that culture will be. The more rules become necessary in order to coerce and force workers to keep their head down, to remember who's in charge. Lots and lots of rules that can't even be followed. An organization becomes dominated by rules in a toxic environment. People will break them because they can't keep them. The more rules you apply to somebody, the more likely they are to break them. They're going to be broken anyway. And then when people break them, they get fired. Firings are frequent in toxic cultures. Retention is measured in weeks and months rather than years and decades. That's a toxic culture. It's sad. Customer service and the experiences exist in toxic cultures, but they are all negative. Feedback from customers will not be customers will change almost as frequent as employees do. You're constantly trying to find a new customer because you can't keep the customers very long. They get tired of the toxic culture as well. They need help. They call in for a quality person. They want to try to find a face and a voice of someone in the company that will help them to get problems done or get things done on time. And they're hard to work with. And so the customers say, man, I'd rather find somebody else to be my supplier than to have to put up with this. Toxic cultures, they're characterized by compliance to enforced the rules. In contrast, a remarkable culture, they're committed to the principles that are applied. The difference is like night and day in every respect. When you experience an organization with a remarkable organizational culture, then it's obvious that the employees are glad to be there. You can sense that the people are committed to doing their best work. There's a presence of excitement and energy and passion in the air. Something different happens when people are free to operate under the principles taught by leaders rather than being forced to be compliant with a stack of rules. I hope that the companies that you work for and work with are not toxic, but can be remarkable. I hope that your company can have a even more remarkable culture than perhaps they do now. Darshan, that is the extent of my notes for tonight. However, I can schedule another time in the future with your group to talk about time management, because there's an entire presentation that I have on managing time. And so for another time in the future, we can spend some time with that if it were to be desirable. Any questions or comments from Jay or Darshan at this point?
Van, thanks a lot for sharing this. And like you rightly mentioned earlier, that this is 50 years of experience distilled down into 1.5 hours. So what's the right thing to do? And which should, I've made a lot of personal notes myself. I could resonate a lot with a lot of things you said. And, like I messaged you yesterday also, we are aware of some of these things, but you tend to drop the ball sometimes. And this should help us get back in. I did have a question with
Okay.
something that I struggle personally with. Um, so I wanted to know if, you got better at some of these things with time, and were you different at 25 and 35 and 45? Like one of the things
Yes.
that, yeah, I
Yeah.
personally struggle with is that I forget things sometimes. Like
This
I,
is developing these things is your own life journey. Some things came natural to me. Um, they came naturally poor to me, and some things came naturally good, in that sense of ones and twos versus fours and fives. Um, I was blessed and fortunate to be raised in a good home with parents and around grandparents and uncles and people that were wise in their own years, and I had a chance to learn from them. In my first job out of college, I was fortunate to have one extraordinary boss manager that was over me that gave me a chance to learn and to work and to fail, gave me a chance to fail in my research work. And then and when he left the company, he was replaced by another person who was a fantastic example of a bad boss. And I learned a lot from the bad boss as much as I did from the good boss. I learned how to not be managed. I learned how to understand the antithesis of some of these noble traits. They were forced upon me. All I needed to do is pay attention and then make deliberate life choices about them. Um, and so I did. I became a student of people. I consider myself a student of people. Um, we were I was taught by my grandmother that I should not smoke. Even if I was on fire, she said I'm not supposed to smoke. Okay. And that was driven in me. So, I I remember as a teenager, after having been very much aware that I'm not supposed to smoke, even if I'm on fire. And there was a construction site near where we lived, and there was a little hutch that had the construction workers' tools in them, where they had their saw and stuff like that. And one of the construction workers was smoked cigarettes. And so as I was out there at that construction site, I saw this pack of cigarettes and a box of matches. I took one cigarette and I took the box of matches, and no one saw me. And out into the woods I went to light this thing up, because not long before that I had been in the junior high school, and I went into the locker room after the playtime and the outside time to change clothes and get ready for the rest of class. And as I walked into the boys' locker room, everybody in there was smoking, and they were offering me a cigarette. I said, no, not right now. I don't want one. But I was actually too embarrassed to take it because I had never smoked. I didn't know how. And I wasn't going to admit that I didn't know how. And so I wanted to be cool like the rest of the people, the rest of the guys. And so this was my chance to learn how to smoke a cigarette so that I wouldn't have to, so that I could participate in this cool thing that they were doing. So I went out in the woods, and fortunately, I had all these little matches and I had this one cigarette. I burnt the cigarette up to nothing, used up all the matches, and still remember to this day. I mean, I was in the seventh grade. I was 14 years old or so. I remember throwing the cigarette down. I didn't know you were supposed to suck in. I had no idea how to do this. So the cigarette got burnt up, literally. It was gone, and all the matches were gone. I threw the butt of the cigarette down. The guy said, man, if it is this hard to get this thing lit, it is not worth it. I was fortunate. I was blessed. I was spared from the curse of that in my life. And then I was able to hang on to my grandmother's indoctrination that I wasn't supposed to smoke, even if I was on fire. But I made a quality decision about that at that moment for those reasons in that time, however it happened for me. I'm not going to do that. I had a first cousin whose father was an absolute drunken sot, a miserable man, a terrible father, a terrible husband. When he came in from work on every Friday night, he was drunk when he got home, and he beat his son and he beat his wife. And we were never allowed to go over to my cousin Tom's house. We didn't know why. Yeah, that was kept from us by our aunts and uncles. And Tom was very seldom able to ever come to our house. And when he did, there was often things that he was troubled by and couldn't talk about. And one time we went to take Tom Wheeler home, and when we got there, his father had gotten home early, but he was drunk and passed out in the floor in his vomit. It was just the smell was just, and the sight was just horrible. That was enough to sear my conscience and my mind that if that's what the drinking and the drunkenness did to him, I don't want any part of it. And as a young teenager, I was spared from the curse of that. I've gone through my whole life without having that problem, without having it to lead into drug. I'm blessed and fortunate in ways I cannot describe, and I can only be thankful. I made quality decisions to not do those things. It just happened. I'm glad it did, because probably I would have been one of the first ones in line trying to do that. And so then when I looked at those things and I get into business and I see how people are treating each other, treating me, I was making quality decisions of how I either want to be or I don't want to be. And they're life quality decisions that I made, and I stand by them, and I implemented them, and I maintained them, and I added to them. And I made other quality decisions that were wrong. I have learned from many of my mistakes. There are so many errors I have made in trying to figure out how to form relationships and how to treat other people and how to be a good leader and how to do teaching. My early notes on my early presentations are wrong. I've had to change them. I still have my very first presentation I ever made in a technical presentation. They were on little clear overhead slides that went up on a little screen overhead projector, and they were drawn just in colored pencils and pens, and they were wrong. Why anybody got anything out of that, I don't know, but they weren't necessarily wrong, but they were so incomplete and not practical and not really very technical. I'm amazed that somehow I even ever got started but that way. But I learned. The thing about it is, in order for me to even have made those, I learned from that, and I learned that I learned more than I can teach. I paid attention to people. I saw and watched and made it a point to observe and learn from the behavior. I didn't have to ask them about stuff. I learned by watching and by doing. When people ask me questions, I love questions, especially in a room format where we're there. I can see your eyes. I can see your hand go up. I can hear the question. I love questions. I learn from questions that other people ask. I don't really learn from me blabbing my mouth on and on and on and on and on. I learn from the time that it takes to put the presentation together. But I don't learn anything from just yakking and bumping my gums. But when people ask a question about something, like you're asking one now, what happens is that I almost always know the answer to the question right away. But what I know is this little piece of information from my past and this little piece of information and this experience. And now when I put all of those together, that becomes the answer. But I've never thought about those things together in the same explanation. And so suddenly I've learned something in trying to be able to answer a question about stuff that I knew very well, but I never associated them together. And that is how I learn from a technical point of view, from a personal point of view, is by answering the questions that are fostered from whatever it is that I'm doing. And that means I got to listen. I love that part. That's my favorite part about teaching. And so looking back over my life, I'd like to be able to say that, yep, I woke up, I was born this way. No, it has been, I've had whippings. I've deserved a lot more whippings than I got. I have deserved a lot more criticism than I've received and didn't get somehow for whatever reason. And it's been a challenging road, but I didn't learn all of these things by my own practice. I've made it a point to learn from the mistakes of others. I've actually tried to be wise about a lot of things, but boy, have I ever been foolish with a lot of other stuff. There's things that I knew better, and I did them anyway. Somehow just to maybe prove it was wrong or that I could do it when others hadn't. No, not really, not too often. And so it's been it continues. It continues to be a trial and error. And so as I go along in life, I try to be more wise than smart. Starting out, I was only smart. And so there's a transition from being smart to wise over the years, and encouraging people to do the same.
Thanks, and I'm just looking forward to digesting a lot of this and putting it in practice. Thanks.
Yep. Anything else?
Guys, do you have any questions? Jay, I think is trying to unmute himself.
No, there's one in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, I can open that. It says,
while teaching or training people, few people may feel boring about the topic. I added images and example.
after a few of them forgot they even attended this training about a particular topic, how can I make it more interesting and let them understand and remember it for a long time? Yeah, this is likely, these are all very boring topics because they're hard. They're not things that we understand. It's just a bunch of stuff. In my opinion, when I have something like this, you pick one or two things personally. You pick something from this and for you, and seize on those that maybe take your ones and twos areas in your life, and you start practicing those and demonstrating those. There is no practical way that I know of to take what we've been learning the last several days and remember any of it. There's going to be one or two things that stuck with you, and that'd be different for everybody that's in here. Most of you are aware of a big waterfall like Niagara Falls in the USA. Massive amounts of water coming over those falls. I'd heard about them all of my life, grew up with them. I'd seen them on TV and pictures and videos of it. But until I actually went and visited it, man, the sound and the feel, you can just feel it pounding on you. It is absolutely awesome. There's no doubt in my mind. I know why that is one of the 7 wonders of the world. It's unbelievable. But imagine walking up to that waterfall and you've got yourself a 10-liter bucket, and you're going to put the 10-liter bucket into the water over the waterfall and catch 10 liters of water. Man, it'll happen just like that. And everybody got 10 liters of water. Everybody in this class has gone up into the waterfall and took their 10-liter bucket. I mean, you missed so much because there's millions and billions of gallons and liters of water going over that waterfall every minute, and you only got this bucket full. In fact, before you can get the bucket out of the falls, it's already overflowing. But you got away with 10 liters of the waterfall. Sometimes a presentation like this, your 10-liter bucket of mind capacity to absorb whatever was being said was done in the first 15 minutes. And the rest of it, you didn't really hear. You couldn't absorb it. Your personal bandwidth of understanding, eyes glaze over. Somewhere today, I say something and it reminds you of something that was yesterday, but between yesterday and that nugget you got in today, blah, 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 blah. You didn't get it. There was nothing that came out that was tangible, that stuck with you. And everybody gets something different. I can go back over this same thing. I could go back over this thing next week, every single bit of it, read it just right off of the charts, and something would jump out on somebody, say, you didn't talk about this last time. Oh yeah, we did. That's because something that was said, one of these little lines somewhere, like, whoa, that's either fantastic, I'm doing that, that's really good, I didn't know how important that was, or it was one of those things that, I didn't know I needed to do that. I got to work. No wonder that I've had this issue or that. I got to work on that. And while you're mulling that over in your mind, 5 other slides went by and you didn't hear a thing. And that's okay. That's perfectly okay. There is almost no way to positively answer this great question. My response to this question is poor compared to the great question that has been asked. And you can't do it all. You can't keep it all fresh. There's almost no way to make this so dynamic and whatnot that can be better than that way. I mean, one of my shortcomings and weaknesses, I'm not a good preparer of presentation material. This is boring. My whole subject matter is about rubber, one of the single most boring topics in the entire world. And you have to somehow make it interesting. And only people that really love rubber find anything interesting about it at all. And it isn't my presentations. It's the fact that the topic is something they're interested in and they're committed to, and so they're able to dig into it. Most of us have gone through our entire lives and never had content like you've been exposed to in the last 2 days ever presented to you in any formidable comment. Maybe one little data point at a time here and there comes up in a discussion or a news article or something that you read or some conversation that you have or had with your parents or have with your children. It isn't like this. This is hundreds of data points that can change your life, and there's no way for you to grab them all. It's too much. But you have it. There's a copy of it that you have. And so you can go back and read it again. You can go back and assess yourself again, which I encourage you to do. Keep your paper of your assessment. Come back in a year and assess yourself again, see where you have improved or declined. Keep it fresh. That's how you grab a hold of it. I don't remember all of these things. I couldn't walk into your room and go by memory of all of these noble traits. I live them, but I can't remember them. I'm not capable of that. But since they're part of me, I don't have to go through the day and say, okay, I need to remember to be kind. I need to remember to smile. I need to remember to, I don't do that. They're a part of me. I naturally do these things. I've made them a part of me at times in my career and my life when they weren't, or they weren't very strong. And as I find new traits, like I mentioned this the other day or yesterday, that one of the things that are a trait of the Indian culture is the ability to make a generational project that goes beyond your time. That is why I'm actually writing books, because I want the knowledge that I have to be generational beyond me. I want to leave the rubber industry better than when I found it. That's generational. I've learned that from India. This is your fault in India that is one of my, I'm making that one of my noble traits, because it wasn't. I never even thought about it, because it doesn't exist here in the United States like that. But that is one of my noble traits, is to think generationally. And so the only way I know how to do that is to make sure I instill things into my children and into my grandchildren. I instill things like this past 2 days into anybody that's willing to listen when I get a chance. I don't go around seeking this. And to write the books that are the result of the mush that's in my mind, to be able to last longer than me.
Thanks, Van. I think we've taken a lot of your time. And it's definitely now not a wait time for you. So we can continue this another time.
Yep.
Thanks a lot for all the learnings, and we really appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Well, we will see you again soon, either on this format or maybe in Bangkok.
All right. See you. Bye bye.
Yes, sir. Bye.
Thanks, Van.